Say Christ is Lord. Say Christ is Lord. Say it!
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unpopular Opinion, and today I'm going to be explaining why The French Connection is the greatest cop movie ever made. Now that's a bold statement considering there's a plethora of excellent police movies like Heat, The Untouchables, Training Day, you name it. But guys, French Connection reigns supreme. So the movie stars Gene Hackman and is directed by William Friedkin. It was released in 1971 and it tells the story of an international drug kingpin who plans to smuggle a bunch of heroin into the US. And two NYPD narcotic detectives get wind of it and they try to build a case and they try to intercept it before the deal goes down. This is also based on the true story of one of the biggest drug busts in US history. And so the fact that this is a true story, the two cops who inspired our main characters in this movie, they actually make an appearance in this film. It's another layer of awesome as to why this movie's great. So needless to say, guys, I'm going to be talking about spoilers, but before we get into the review, there's a couple things you have to keep in mind. First of all, guys, this is not an action movie. I've heard a lot of movie reviewers, like Watch Mojo or the American Film Institute, they say that this is an action movie. Guys, if you go into the film with the mindset that this is an action movie, you're actually going to be very disappointed because in reality, this is more of a police surveillance detective film with some moments that are really thrilling, but consistently, it's not really an action movie. And also, there's a lot of really small details in the film that it makes you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention to this movie in order to fully understand and appreciate it. So if you go into the film with those two things in mind, I think you'll actually really enjoy the film. So our main character in The French Connection is Jimmy Popeye Doyle, who was played expertly by Gene Hackman, who you guys know I love Gene Hackman. He's one of my favorite actors. And his partner, Cloudy, was played by Roy Scheider. So Popeye Doyle, he is the epitome of the rough and tough New York City cop. In fact, the American Film Institute ranked him as number 44 on the greatest movie heroes of all time. So this guy, Popeye Doyle, he's a dick. He's hard to get along with. He's pretty belligerent, but he gets the job done. In his introduction scene, the guy's dressed as Santa Claus during a drug bust.
Like Santa Claus? Huh? All right, let's sing a little song. Jingle bell. Jingle bell, jingle bell.
So he and his partner chase the perp down. Then they beat him to a pulp.
That's enough, don't kill him! That's enough!
And interrogate the guy. Again, all while Popeye is dressed as Santa Claus.
Bust your ass for those 3 bags, and I'm gonna nail you for picking your feet in Poughkeepsie.
That's the kind of character we're dealing with here. So he's the kind of cop who will beat information out of you, and much like the movie poster says, Doyle, he's bad news, but a good cop. Then after that, the scene where they go to the nightclub, that was pretty awesome. It had that 70s feeling, and it displays Popeye's larger-than-life charm and big personality. But then it switches immediately to business when he sees a table in the nightclub full of high rollers who he suspects are dirty. So that was a pretty interesting yet effective way to display Popeye's ability as a police officer, his effectiveness, and his dedication to the job. Like in that scene, he notices the table, they're spending big money, but he recognizes some of them as low-level drug pushers, yet they're kind of cosplaying as high rollers and highballers. So, him knowing that these people aren't actually high profile, he decides to follow them and stake them out, and he follows them all night, all while he's off duty. Again, which shows what kind of dedicated cop he is, and that's when he uncovers the case. Overall, that was a really interesting sequence. Also, let's talk Roy Scheider. You know him from playing Chief Brody in Jaws. He played Cloudy in this movie. Pretty good performance, and it was a solid supporting character. Also, our main villain, Alan Charnay, he's the international drug kingpin. He's the kind of villain that has like a interesting aristocratic villain elegance to him. It's kind of hard to explain, but he's a professional French villain, and he carries himself with such grace. So it's refreshing to see a movie featuring a villain that isn't vulgar or crass. You know, this guy, Alan Charnay, he's just a classy professional villain, and I really like that about this movie. Now, the reason why this movie's awesome is it has that uniquely 1970s feeling to it. It's almost like looking at a time capsule of the 70s when you watch this movie. But it's also the rare type of film that gets better every time you watch it. I've seen this movie dozens of times, and each time, the viewing experience is better than the last. And it's not just because sometimes I notice details that I haven't seen before, but it's just that good of a movie that it gets better every time you watch it. The movie is full of police surveillance and stakeouts, which in my opinion, that was done very, very well. Like one scene in particular that I really liked was our two cops, you know, Cloudy and Popeye. They were listening to the wiretap, they were playing cards and laughing. I thought that was just an amazing scene. Not to mention them tailing the bad guys on foot or by car. That was great. And I really, really loved the small detail of the cops putting a hat in the backseat window dashboard, pretty much signaling that they're detectives who are on duty. It's like a small little Easter egg thing, but it's details like that consistently seen throughout the film that just adds so much greatness to this film. And guys, the scene where Popeye and Cloudy clear that bar, that was epic. Like you see these two guys going into a shady bar and they cleared the joint. They're telling everyone like, get on the wall, get off the bar. And there's drugs everywhere. They're dropping pills. They're dropping all these like substances. They're going in, they're toughing up these perps. And then Popeye has that secret meeting with his informant. Man, like that was just such a cool, tough cop scene that I think movies nowadays are just lacking. Like stuff like that was just awesome. And another scene that I really, really, really loved was Popeye was following our main villain, Charnay. Charnay goes into a subway and he makes Popeye. Popeye gets made. And Charnay manages to trick Popeye. He hops back on the train. And then he's giving him that taunting wave as he leaves the station. Bitch! That whole sequence was just a masterclass in filmmaking. Not to mention the rivalry between the cops and the feds in this movie on the case. That was pretty legit. So that rivalry with the feds, it just adds another layer of tension. And it was another dimension to the film that just really, really speaks and stands out. I really love that aspect of the film. And speaking of tension, there was one scene that I really, really liked. It's basically the French guys, their plan is to use like a TV star, a French celebrity. He has a car and he shipped it across the ocean. He's pretending like he's doing work for French TV, but they stuff the heroin in the car and the cops impound the car. They find the car, and the dude's name is Devereaux. He's in the police station, he's fidgeting, he's freaking out. He's like, I want that car brought back. And the cops are kind of like playing like, oh, it was picked up because it was blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, the cops are in the garage ripping it apart, looking for the heroin. And you just see the dude, he's super nervous, but he's also like, give me the car back. Come on, let's get the car back, let's go. Because he knows he's this close to being busted. And the fact that it's ping-ponging between them ripping the car up and him like in the station freaking out, that was pretty cool.
I ripped everything out of there except the rocker panels.
Come on, Herb. What the hell is that?
And then they go back and they're like, hey, we got your car. And he's like, oh, you got my car? And they repaired it or they replaced it. And the guy's like, oh, that was a close one. He thinks that he got away with it, but he really didn't. And that was an awesome sequence. And guys, I didn't even mention that iconic car chase sequence. Right now, I double dare you to type into Google greatest movie car chases. The French Connection's gonna get mentioned. Undoubtedly, the French Connection's gonna get mentioned. So basically, by this time in the movie, it's like halfway through, Alan Charnay, our villain, he set up the deal. He set up the drug deal, but he knows that the cops are closing in on him. And his hitman, Pierre, he's like, do you want me to assassinate Popeye? I can do it. But Charnay declines. He's like, no, he'll just be replaced. We're going to be gone, so it's not worth it. But Pierre decides to go through with it anyway. So he has a rifle, and he tries to snipe Popeye. But he misses, and Popeye chases the dude. And the guy, he manages to run to an L train, a train elevated above the New York City streets. And he hops on the train and gets away. But Popeye, he commandeers a civilian's car, and he dashes after this train, trying to chase it. So as he's chasing this train in this car on the really busy streets of New York City, Pierre's on the train. He manages to hijack it and he tells the mortarman, don't stop at the next station because he knows Popeye's in hot pursuit.
I gotta stop in the next station. There's the brake, and I blow you in half.
And as a result, it causes like a panic on the train and people are like, whoa, what the hell's going on? I'm telling you, like this sequence was just epic. All the while, again, Popeye is speeding through the busy streets of New York City, and what makes this car car chase so exciting is the fact that, well, the crew and the filmmakers, they didn't get proper permission to film it. Like, they didn't get the permits. They didn't properly close the street down. Basically, they had a few off-duty cops who would flash a badge if anyone was like questioning, like, what are you doing? Oh, police business, no big deal. And they put like a siren on top of the car, but realistically, they didn't properly close down the streets. So when you see the shots of the car speeding down the road, those aren't extras and those aren't other stunt drivers. Those are legitimately real pedestrians and real life drivers on an actual unclosed New York City street. Like, according to the director, William Friedkin, they put that siren on the car, and the stunt driver, Bill Hickman, he dashed it down the road at 90 miles an hour for 26 New York blocks. And like I said, the fact that those cars and people in the shot weren't extras, some of the accidents you see in the film were actually real accidents. So there were some times where they were having Gene Hackman get in the car and film, so he was dashing down the street. So the real actor, Gene Hackman, was speeding this car super fast, and he accidentally crashes into a car. Some guy was pulling out of his house to go to work, and he bashes into it. That was a real accident. They kept that in the movie. So the scenes where Gene Hackman keeps crashing the car, all of those accidents, minus like the baby carriage that was staged, everything else was legit that they kept into the movie. So Gene was crashing the car into people. That was real. That was all real, my guys. That's what's awesome about this film.
So in the midst of one of these long, really hell for leather runs, suddenly out of the corner of my eye, I see a guy pulling in front of me. And bam, we hit like that. It drove me into the steel upright.
And all the while on the train, Pierre, the hitman, he caused a panic on the train because the conductors, they're inspecting, why did the mortarman not stop at the station? He emerges with his gun. He's all like, get back, get back. And everyone's panicking. The mortarman faints and they're pulling into the next station and the train is speeding super quick. And there's another train at the stop. And as a result, everyone's running to the back. Pierre's like, oh, shit. And he has to run away, try to get to the back of the train as quick as possible. Stop! But as the train's speeding in, it triggers some emergency brake and it's like braking hard. And it bashes into the still train, the train that's in the station. It's like, bam! That was so cool. And I've always loved the sound effect of like a train braking hard, like that screeching noise, and how you see the camera just slowly move to the back of the train and then boom. It was awesome. The camera in the train shakes hard. Pierre, he hits his head on some glass and he loses his gun and he's all disoriented. And then Popeye skids to the next stop and the two lock eyes and it's like, dude, that tension was insane. And at that point, Pierre, he tries to run away, so he turns around and Popeye shoots him in the back, falls down the stairs.
Hold it!
There we go. Like, it started with a bang, it ended with a bang, and that sequence was just so amazing. And that iconic shot of Popeye shooting Pierre in the back, that was so legendary, that's actually the poster of the film. That's how iconic and beloved that scene is. It's a super iconic scene, really awesome. I really love that sequence. Also, the ending was just great. Basically, Popeye and Cloudy, they find the stuff in the car, and they give it back to Devereaux to make Devereaux think that he doesn't know the cops found it, and they follow it. It leads him right to the deal. So we got these bad guys and these mobsters in a rundown warehouse. They exchange the money, they exchange the drug, the deal goes down, and as they're trying to leave, the only exit is this bridge that the NYPD has blocked off in a barricade, and they're like, uh-oh, what's going on? And Popeye, he emerges from the blockade of cars, and him and Charnay lock eyes, and Popeye gets to do the taunting wave. That was just the money shot of the film. So our bad guys, they turn around and they run back to the warehouse. Charnay, he doesn't actually go into the warehouse. He runs into another building and the cops surround the warehouse and there's an awesome shootout. Like the cops and the criminals are shooting it out with each other. Now, the ending shootout, it was awesome. It was pretty cool, but it wasn't done in like a flashy action type of way. It was more so a matter-of-factly quick exchange of gunfire. Very, very quick to the point. So it's more so, you know, we're not going for action thrilling points. We're just, no, matter-of-factly, they opened fire, we returned fire.
Stop!
And that was it. So it was a small exchange of gunfire that lasted about a minute. Very interesting stuff. So like I said, the criminals surrender after like maybe a minute of gunfire. Charnay, he runs into that rundown, decrepit building while Popeye's pursuing him. And this is like the climax of the film. So Popeye's in this really nasty rundown building. He knows Charnay's in here, but then he sees a shadowy figure emerge from another room. He opens fire. The two exchange gunshots. And it turns out he accidentally killed his rival in the FBI because, like I said, there was a rivalry between the feds and the cops in this movie, and he accidentally shot him to death. So Cloudy's all like, oh, bro, you just shot Moldred, you're in so much trouble, or oh my God, you killed him.
You shot Moldred.
And Popeye's just unfazed. He's so dedicated. He's so locked into catching Alan Charnay. He puts so much time and effort into this case. He doesn't care. His response is a cold, he's here and I'm gonna get him.
The son of a bitch is here. I saw him. I'm gonna get him.
So we see Cloudy standing over Moldred. It's like, he killed him. Tragic. This is a tragic scene. Popeye, he runs into a room in the distance. Then you hear a single gunshot. The movie fades to black. It's an eerie setting, unsettling. That music is kind of creepy. Fades to black. Then the film ends. It ends with pictures, end credit pictures of the criminals involved, and it tells them the fate of what happened to these criminals after the drug bust went down. And we learned that a lot of the lower level criminals, they got lighter sentences. You know, they were caught but got lighter sentences, where majority of the high profile big players, like the leaders, most of them got off. Like most of them either got like a slap on the wrist or they're able to have their cases thrown out. But Alan Charnay, our main villain, was never caught. He managed to escape back to France. And honestly, the ending credits after that gunshot was just so awesome. It was eerie and it was kind of haunting with that music. Like I said, it tells the audience the fate of these criminals, and it was done masterfully. After all we've been through, after all the effort in this film, Charnay manages to escape back to France, much like how in real life, the real life French Connection, the real life villain, he also escaped back to France and was never caught. So when we learned that Popeye and Cloudy were reassigned, the guy got away, that's just cop realism. Like sometimes you win some, you lose some. You manage to intercept the deal, you manage to bust the drugs and get the drugs, but a lot of the big players got away, and that's what makes this movie pretty cool and real and gritty. Plus that final gunshot in the room where Popeye disappears and you hear the gunshot, that was pretty cool, eerie, haunting, and I've always interpreted it as Popeye is so focused, so lasered in, so dedicated, like I'm going to catch this guy, that he goes into this room and he's just shooting in shadows. Either he's paranoid or something, but he's shooting into nothing. That's how much he's out to get this guy. And just the way this movie was shot, it adds a lot of realism to it. It's no wonder why William Friedkin got Best Director at the Oscars for this. It was filmed kind of like how a documentary is filmed. So the cameras, they had to keep up with the actors a lot of over-the-shoulder, unsteady angles and camera movements, which made it pretty interesting and gritty. Again, it's like you're watching a documentary, but in a really awesome way. And speaking of gritty, something I really liked about this movie is I really like how it didn't glamorize New York City. It shows New York City as it truly is, dirty, full of criminals, and not the Hollywood trope of the greatest city in the world. It's one of the few films that really shows New York in an authentic way. So no offense to my viewers from New York, but you know it's true. There are areas that are scummy, run down, and it's not all glamorized like the movies make it out to be. No offense, but you know it's true. And you know what else I liked about this movie? This is something that I really appreciate about the film. This movie shows a time when cops were actually allowed to be cops. There was no defund the police or any of that dumb nonsense. No woke people or administrations trying to interfere with police work. Like, cops were allowed to be cops. They were able to do their jobs effectively. They were rough, tough, manly, macho men who got the job done. And that's what I really appreciate about this movie. So we don't have any of that nonsense. We just see cops being allowed to operate as cops and doing their jobs effectively. It makes the movie better, in my opinion. So overall, guys, that's my feelings on The French Connection. I think it is the greatest cop movie ever made. In fact, I love this movie so much. When I was in high school, this was the screensaver on my phone, like my background home screen. That was The French Connection's poster. And speaking of high school, on the day of my graduation, the last thing I did before leaving for my graduation ceremony and going to my graduation to get my diploma, I watched The French Connection. Literally the last thing I did before graduating high school was watching The French Connection. That's how much I love this movie. So, it's a masterpiece, it made Gene Hackman a star, and it won Best Picture at the Oscars at a time when the Oscars actually had credibility. But I digress. Guys, that's my feeling on The French Connection. What do you think about the movie? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Have you seen it? Have you not seen it? If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you see it. Such a great film, super amazing, really iconic, awesome stuff, great performances. I even love the sound quality. It's a weird thing to say, but like the gunfire effects in the movie, I love those. I really love the gunfire effects. Weird thing to say for the closing, but it's true. Well, guys, that's all I have for you. Remember to like the video, subscribe, comment below. Also, check me out on Instagram. That will be linked below as well. A couple videos are going to be linked below as well. Check them out. Doesn't hurt you. It only helps you. You know what? Forget that, but still follow me on Instagram. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it, and I'll see you on the next Unpopular Opinion.